Welcome to Women's Sports Weekly, where women's sports happen every day, but we talk about it once a week. I'm Carolyn.
And I'm Danielle. Women's Sports Weekly is a podcast where we discuss the latest news, explore interesting stories, and share our love for women's sports. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Follow us and rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Send us an email at womensportsweeklypod@gmail.com, and we may feature your email on an episode.
Guess what?
What?
Women's Sports Weekly is officially unrivaled.
It officially is. That is for sure.
We had the opportunity to go to Unrivaled this past weekend in Miami. And a couple weeks ago, you told me that you needed a trip to Miami. And
I said I needed a trip to Unrivaled, which just happens to be Miami. The point of this trip was Unrivaled.
For sure. We were not at the beach.
No.
We were at Unrivaled all day. It was amazing. But let's talk about how we got here.
Let's get into it. Why don't you start?
The week you were gone, I was out. Of course, everything happens that week. I was out with some friends, some people who listen to the podcast. Shout out Brittany. She is a listener and a friend of this pod. And we were out with the creators of the WNBA Club, Dia and Lindsay, who we've talked about. I believe we were at the 99ers when this conversation happened. So all of the Denver women's sports things coming together. And she was like, you should really go to Unrivaled. And I was like, I don't know if that's something that we'd be able to do. And she was like, you can do it. Just reach out, let them know who you are. Instilled a lot of confidence in us. And we reached out to Unrivaled's team. And a week and a half later, we were packing our bags and heading to Miami.
The moment you told me you got a response and that we should start looking at flights, I was in disbelief. Could not believe this was happening. Really didn't know what to expect going into it. Like, obviously from a game perspective, I knew what to expect from the Unrivaled piece, but the whole experience, did not know what to expect. We were working our butts off to get prepped for this trip because we knew we would need certain things to do player interviews, and we didn't know who or when or what that would look like. And that part was definitely stressful, but also very exciting. Like, I feel like there was just this excitement in the air between us for the week leading up to it.
For sure. And so we went as media. And so we had access to the players. We were able to go to the games on Friday and Saturday, which we're going to get into, but we had access to the players on Thursday, and then we had access to the players Friday and Saturday morning for shoot around. We got to go to practices. We got to interview them. The most incredible weekend for us, not only fans, but now working on this podcast together to be able to do something just so amazing and get to meet people we talk about all the time. It was really cool.
Yeah, we've talked about before how much fun going to a game in person is versus watching on the TV. Obviously, when we can go in person, it's just on another level of excitement. Then having the opportunity to go to practices and go to shoot-arounds just brought that to even another level because both of us had played sports growing up. I played basketball in college, and just being back in that environment and seeing these teammates bond together on the court or talk through strategy, it just brought me back and makes me miss it so much. And to be that up close and personal to players that we've been watching for forever and getting to see them put in all the reps, put in the practice, talk to their coaches, talk to their teammates, that was truly an unmatched experience for me.
Definitely. Before we get into our whole weekend, which we're going to talk about practices, we're going to talk about the games, we're going to talk about the atmosphere, all of those things. This whole episode is going to be dedicated to Unrivaled. We have so much that we want to cover, so you're going to get all of it. And we just need to give a huge thanks to the Unrivaled team who were so gracious to us, were so welcoming, were so helpful for us, this being our first time in this setting as media, and really just made it a memorable time.
Unrivaled, this is their first year doing this, so they're also learning a lot, and to treat us with such grace as we're learning a lot, that meant a lot to us. So I just echo that. Thank you to the Unrivaled team. Can't thank them enough.
For sure. Okay, let's get into this. So last Wednesday, we hosted trivia at the 99ers, and it was amazing.
So much fun. Not to mention, we were coming off of full days of work and we were like, okay, it's go time. So we go to 99ers and we do sports trivia and together provided the questions for this trivia.
Yes, it was in collaboration with Together. And so they are hosting trivia at numerous women's sports bars, and the 99ers asked us to host that trivia. It was a packed house. There were a ton of people there. So many friends from Dodgeball came.
Shout out.
Which was so sweet. We had a really great time.
I think it just set the tone for the weekend we were about to get ourselves into. Like, we got in the mindset of being around people who love sports and getting to just talk sports the whole time and ask questions and be on the mic, which I personally think helped me going into some of those interviews.
Yeah.
So I do think trivia was a really nice segue heading into the weekend.
For sure, because we are on this mic, but it's not live. We edit the crap out of it. But when you're at trivia, it's live and we were on the mic. And then this whole past weekend, we were live on the mic with players.
Yeah, forget the editing part. You and I right now are just talking to each other with our dog Scout next to us. Me talking in front of a packed bar is a lot different, and that is intimidating, but it was good practice for me.
And when I first met you, you would do presentations virtually at work and you would shake and be so clammy and sweaty. Your progress from that person to now is a total 180.
It really is. And I still get nervous in situations, but
we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We both got nervous this past weekend. It was a lot. So right from the 99ers, we hopped in our car. We drove right to the airport, took a red-eye flight to wake up in Miami Thursday morning.
And to wake up is being generous. I don't know how much sleep I got on that flight.
We were team no sleep. We got into our Airbnb. We took a quick 2-hour rest/nap, hardly slept at all. And we got up and we headed over to Wayfair Arena, which is where Unrivaled is played.
Walking into the arena for the first time. Now, this is a small arena. If you've watched on TV, you can see there's not many rows deep. It's unlike any other arena we've been to in the past, because that's not what it historically has been. But walking up to the building for the first time on the first day, we were just so giddy. And at that point, still really didn't know what we were walking into.
So we get into the arena, we get our media passes, and they bring you into a media room and there's other media there. We got to meet other people who do podcasts, journalists. So that was really cool just to be around like-minded people and see professionals, because we don't have a journalism background. We both have separate backgrounds, separate degrees. We got to interact with them just a bit, which was really great. And then the Unrivaled communications team works with the players as they're coming out of practice and kind of like sees how they're doing, sees what else they have to do during the day, and then asks them if they want to come interview. So we knew that we probably weren't going to be able to do a long form podcast with anyone. It would have been too much time for what we need and the depth that we want to go into. So we did shorter interviews to then post on our social media.
Be on the lookout for our social media, because you'll definitely get some clips of those and get to see some of those interactions throughout the week.
We're going to continue posting for probably weeks about Unrivaled, because we got so much. I counted this past week, we got 18 players to get on the mic with us, which was just amazing. We were expecting maybe 6 to 12, so totally exceeded our expectations. But please be sure to follow us on social media, on all the socials, so that you can see that. And then our first interview of the day was with Katie Lou Samuelson, who plays for the Phantom and just signed with the Seattle Storm in the W. We spoke to her actually the day that it was announced that she was going over to Seattle. So when we spoke to her, we didn't know that yet. But tell us about your experience, because we had to be strategic of how we were splitting up the interviews. So we did it based on our college team interests, and that worked out well.
So we set our bags down in the media room, and basically the communications team was like, Katie Lou is ready for you. At that point, we still didn't know who we were interviewing. So it was just like, okay, Katie Lou's ready. We walk out of the room. There's Katie Lou Samuelson. I watched her play in college when she was at UConn. I watched her sister when she was at Stanford. I always talk about on the podcast how my dad's a big UConn fan. To me, this was just another, like, is this real life? I'm literally standing next to Katie Lou Samuelson right now. She just got off playing from the Fever. As you said, she just signed with the Seattle Storm. And this is our first interaction of the day, and she's just coming off practice. So we walk in to a back room, and and get set up for this interview. First one of the weekend. So
first one
nerves
with a
are high.
professional player.
And someone I really enjoy. Unrivaled didn't know what questions we were going to ask Katie. Katie didn't know what questions we were about to ask her. I think they were under the impression that we were going to go into a more long-winded interview, which, to be fair, I don't think that is what she wanted to be doing right after practice. So I think once we started asking the questions and she realized it was going to be shorter, more fun questions, she definitely loosened up a bit. And I was so nervous. She is so tall. All these players on the TV, you know they're tall, but you don't realize how tall until you're standing next to them. I have my paper in my hand with our questions on it, and my hand is just shaking
uncontrollably.
And the paper is just fluttering from my shaking hand. I'm looking down, asking the questions. And Katie, like I said, Katie Lou warmed up when she realized this was going to be, quick, fun questions. But I was very nervous in this moment. And I knew I was going to be nervous, but I was not expecting my hand to shake so bad.
It was really incredible to watch you do that for the first time. And it is nerve-wracking. So it happens.
Yeah. Afterwards, I said to you, do you think she noticed that my hand was shaking? And you were like, yes.
I do think she noticed. When we post the video, we'll have to, I don't think we even need to zoom in. Like you'll see Danielle is just shaking.
So embarrassing.
So the interviews then just continued all day. Just people coming in. We were rotating through them. It was incredible. And it was getting towards the end of the day. And we hadn't interviewed anyone who had gone to Notre Dame or anyone from South Carolina yet.
You had asked, can we talk to Alicia Gray? At that point, I was like, oh my God, I have not spoken to anyone from Notre Dame. So I asked the Unrivaled communications team. And at that point, the only two left for the day were Arike Gumbawale and Skylar Diggins-Smith. I'm huge fans of both of them. So I literally just said, would it be possible to talk to someone from Notre Dame? Who comes walking out? Both. Skylar Diggins-Smith and Arike Gumbawale. I was just in shock at that point. And then Alicia Gray also walked out. She went to South Carolina. Obviously, we talk about you being a huge South Carolina fan, having gone there. So that was really cool to experience both our favorite college teams.
Yes.
Come out together. And just to clarify, this is still day one. So a lot of the other practices had wrapped up.
I have never seen you happier in my entire life than when you were talking to Arike and Skylar Diggins-Smith, especially Skylar. We posted it on our Instagram this past weekend. There's a picture of Skylar. It looks like she's singing to you.
I know, on the little mic.
But she is just answering a question and you are beaming in it. And I'm like, I'm about to lose my wife. But she was so gracious with her time. And I just have to say that all of the players we interviewed, it was so surprising to me. All of them were super nice to us. They were incredibly gracious with their time. They were so cool. I was truly amazed because it is scary to meet people who you look up to and worry that they might be cold or it could be a bad day, whatever it may be. Everyone warmed up and was having a good time with us.
Yeah, and they have a lot going on. They are coming off of practices and shoot-arounds, and they're being asked, like, hey, can you do an interview with so-and-so? They have no idea who we are. For them to come over to us and have a smile on their face and be so generous with their time and the way they were answering the questions across the board was truly what made the experience so good, because I think if they had come off and were not nice, we would have been nervous to continue forward. I just appreciate the players doing that, knowing that's probably not the first thing on their list, but it was cool. We got to introduce ourselves and we told the players, hey, I'm Danielle. This is Carolyn. We're married. We have a podcast. Some of the players thought that was really cool. And it was a nice way to get the conversation started going into the interviews.
I want to give our listeners a sneak peek into the interviews, and I think we should just show them the entire Skylar Diggins-Smith interview. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I think everyone should listen to that one.
All right, let's get into it.
All right, Skylar Diggins-Smith, longtime fan. I am like starstruck right now, so nice to meet you.
You as well.
Thanks for being here. We just have a few questions to learn more about you and Unrivaled and your journey here. So what's been the most surprising thing about Unrivaled so far?
For me, I think maybe how fast our team gelled. When I was looking at the group, I was really excited to get out here. But just being in this environment, seeing how fast everything came together, just having success really early. We didn't know how long it would take, but I think just how fast our chemistry came together here.
What's one thing you've learned about yourself so far in this format?
Yeah, it's a lot of nuances in this game that's different from 5-on-5. Some concepts that could be similar that may carry over for us. I think just really taking this time and taking it really seriously. I think that's what we did in our club, how we've been running our club, just really diligent, taking this time to get better, understanding we only have 5. So it's really important to rely on each other and our bodies and making sure we recover and things like that. And so I think the aspect of the game that's so fast paced and up and down, it really kind of fits our personnel personally. And then seeing how the final score, the target score quarter comes into play, because anything can happen. If you down, you could come back and win. If you up, you kind of got to protect. And so there's some strategy that goes into that. So I just think the nuances within this type of 3-on-3 game that's full court, that's kind of different from like the street ball 3-on-3 that you grew up playing.
Quick side question. Did you think when you did that celebration in one of your game winners that so many memes were going to come out of that?
No, I never know what I'm going to do the next minute, my poor mom watching the game. But it was a lot of fun. Obviously, that was the first game for us and the first time something like that happened, hitting a buzzer beater. And it was just a big moment for us in our club, especially being projected last. So it was a big win for us. It was an exciting moment, and we just went crazy.
We loved watching that game. So a few things about your teammates now. Okay. Who's the one person on your team to leave you on red?
To leave me on red, we don't do that here at our club in the LO club. We don't they know better than to leave Big Mama on red. How about that?
I like it. Who are you most likely to have a heart-to-heart with?
Probably Leash, because I know Leash the longest. She a good listener.
You both had the same answer to that one. Who's most likely to trash talk?
Oh my gosh, Courtney, absolutely, Courtney Williams. She just wake up trash talking, go to bed trash talking.
I can see that. Who's most likely to play DJ in the locker room?
Well, shoot, 9 times out of 10, we're going to have Court Pandora on, to be honest. But I ain't mad at any of my teammates that do it. I feel like my music now is a little bit outdated. So, I pass it to that generation.
Pandora, that is a throwback.
Pandora, shout out, come through Pandora. Come sponsor us, Pandora.
All right, switching gears a little bit. What are your Final Four predictions for NCAA women's basketball?
Any Final Four that includes my Notre Dame, number 1.
Go Irish.
Number 1.
I'm there
Fighting
with you.
Irish, But yeah, it's been so many teams that's been playing good. Connecticut had a good win the other night. South Carolina's always going to be in the mix. But USC, UCLA, that Big Ten conference been crazy to watch with them 2 teams. So I don't care as long as my Notre Dame Irish is in it and in the championship. How about that? But good luck to everybody. It's been real fun to watch the parity this year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's awesome. And last question, who's your favorite women's athlete, either past or present?
That's so hard to say. I've been really inspired. In our league, I've been really inspired by Lisa and her legacy, and it's still so relevant, carries on to this day. She still continues to give back. She's still a part of our broadcast. We love Lisa here. Serena Williams. We had another goal. We had Coco here that was watching our game, Coco Golf. We had so many Olympians that come through and shown love, so we appreciate it. Alex Morgan was here. She came, show us love. So we appreciate everybody that comes out and that has been a part of this league, supporting our league. This is where it's at. Women's sports is where it's at. So if you're not with it, get on the bandwagon, because it's almost full.
Louder for the people in back.
And say it with me. 1, 2, 3. Hootie hoo! Big hootie energy.
Okay, we're back. So if you are only listening to this podcast, know that if you're on Spotify, or you can check us out on YouTube, you can see the pure joy on Danielle's face in that interview. And Skylar was just so amazing with us. So gracious again, as was every other player, but just gave us great answers and really took the time to be with us.
Yeah, she was just excited, like coming off of practice. And at that time of the interview, the Lunar Owls were still undefeated, and it was just really awesome and cool.
And at that time, Notre Dame was in the number 1 spot. We don't know where they're going to fall, but they did lose this past weekend. So we'll see. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the practices that we got to see, because this was honestly the highlight for me, getting to sit in on the practice. So can you talk a little bit about the takeaways from watching the practices at Unrivaled?
Yes. So the way they set up their practices is they have their main court, which is the court you see on TV, or if you've been to Unrivaled, the court they play on. And that's where one team will practice. And then at the same time, they have another team practice on the practice court. They have media time slots where they allow media to come in for like 20-ish minutes towards the end of their practice, when they're not talking about their game plan, pretty much.
Their scout.
Yeah. So going into the practice and getting to see the players run through drills and scrimmage and talk through plays and talk about their upcoming game. Similar to what I said earlier, having played in college, having coached college, to be back in that environment made me miss it so much.
I wanted to stay there all day because, first of all, the players put so many reps into practice, just repetition. And so you begin to see the process. And I think a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. They get to play these games. And it is amazing. But the practice that goes into it and the monotony of it is like, whoa, they're really in the process, which is a good place to be, but you really have to love it.
A lot of them in their interviews did say the great thing about Unrivaled is the access they have to the equipment, the access they have to the facilities they're working in, to the coaching staffs. They are so competitive and they want to be the best of the best, and they are the best of the best. And that is why, because of the work they're putting in behind the scenes that no one else sees.
And so think about it. If this was an off season without Unrivaled, you pay a coach to do player development with you. You pay to access weights. You probably pay someone to train you. And here they have that. They have access to medical staff. Like all of these things that they would have to pay for in the off season are now being provided through this league, and they're getting paid.
One of the common things that came up in interviews as well was this is a player-founded, player-run league, and the players know what they want and need, and that's part of what makes it so special.
That was definitely one of the takeaways of this is what it looks like when you have a player-led league. It was really incredible.
The other thing at practice is that I don't want to say I was necessarily surprised, but something that was just noticeable is they have a lot of coaches on their coaching staff. Like they have male practice players. They are equipped with a lot of professionals to help run these different organizations within Unrivaled as well.
The other thing to that is the way that they communicate with each other. Not only the way that the players and the coaches are communicating, but also the players communicating with themselves. It's definitely a collaborative environment. I think that's the difference between college, high school level, and the pros. There's lots of differences, but that is a major one. It doesn't feel as hierarchical, if that's the correct word. It feels like everyone's working together and everyone's kind of co-workers, even though there's a coach there, even though there's practice players there, even though there's players there, everyone's working together to make sure that they understand the scout, make sure that they know how they're communicating, how they're going to communicate throughout the game. I loved that.
What were some other takeaways for you from practices?
Okay, we have to talk about the fitness level of these players.
Yes. And when we say we were at practice, we were on the court sitting on a seat on the sideline right next to these women. We weren't up at top of the bleachers looking down. We were right next to them. And of course, the interviews, we got to be right up close to them. So yes, to your point, just how their physiques.
I know. The first player that I saw was Natasha Cloud. And I was like, holy cannoli, she's ripped.
Yeah.
She is ripped. And then we saw Shakira Austin. You're like, you are the most fit, the most tall person I've ever seen in my entire life.
I know. In person, she was probably the most shocking to me because, yes, I knew she was taller. I didn't realize how tall and how built she was until I saw her in person. It's just incredible to me.
I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but like truly every single player was beautiful. We were like, oh my gosh, every single one of these players, every single one could be like high fashion model. That's what it felt like. I was like, I am just surrounded by beautiful people. It was really, I don't know how many different words I can use. Astounded, amazed, all of those things.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And then the other thing that I think we both miss about being on a team is it's so clear the bonds that these players have. Over the weekend, it was Natasha Cloud's birthday, and in practice, they had brought her balloons. She mentioned that Katie Lou had gotten her donuts. They were celebrating. They were dancing with her. The bond that they share, the way that they interact with each other, the way that they interact with people they know. I was like, oh, this environment is just one that I want to be in all the time.
Yeah. To add on to that piece too, all these clubs that are within Unrivaled are all practicing, all playing, all in that one arena. They're all staying around the same area. They're all doing things together outside of Unrivaled Ray Burrell, when we interviewed her, she said she was surprised that like the experiences Unrivaled offers for the players. She's like, we're going to Disney World later this week. And the point is they're bonding with people who they play against all the time in the WNBA, who they may not have known as well, or who they only know as someone they compete against. And the bond that they're clearly creating with the other teams in the organization as well is really cool. One of the games, Ryan Howard got blocked hard by Brittany Griner and is on the ground. Brittany Griner went to pick her up and she hit Brittany Griner's hand, but was laughing. Yes, they're so competitive, but also they're all creating these special bonds being a part of this, which I think is going to go a long way in the WNBA as well. And I'm really curious to see how that plays off once that season comes back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too because they're getting so much from Unrivaled, and especially as they go into planning this new collective bargaining agreement, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
These are no-brainers now. There are things that need to be put in place that these women are receiving now at Unrivaled that definitely need to continue into the W. But let's go into practice, and we're going to give you like a little taste of what practice sounds like. And this was at a practice with Vinyl, and Danielle and I are commentating a little bit. So let's get into it.
We are live at practice right now, and I can cry. I'm so excited.
Why do you want to cry?
I just really can't believe this is my life right now.
It's been so cool. I could sit at practice all day.
Same. And meeting the players has been so cool. Oh my God, there's Enrique. And they've
just walked
all been so nice and a lot bigger in person than I thought.
and a lot nicer than I thought.
Yes.
Not that I was expecting them not to be nice, but just pleasantly surprised.
It's been unreal so far and coolest thing ever.
Maybe truly an unrivaled weekend.
Yeah.
Nothing can beat it.
I know. Should have got married here. Celebrate our anniversary.
We're going to renew our vows here.
Okay, we're back. Danielle, do you still stand by the comment that you wish we got married at Unrivaled?
Maybe that's a little much, but
I say double down.
we should go back and do an anniversary trip at
I
Unrivaled.
said renew our vows. We'll have to do it.
You know where I would want to renew our vows? You know where the players get introduced and come out of the tunnel and it's like that big Unrivaled and it's like that laced. That's where we could stand on.
Yes.
As like a little stage.
So if you've watched Unrivaled, you hear the players get announced and they come out and then come onto a tiny stage and do some kind of pose or something like that. That is where Danielle wants to renew her vows. I love that.
Yep. I think we should do it in a few years down the line.
When we reach out to the Unrivaled team again, we'll be like, okay, we're coming again, hopefully, if you allow us. And we want to renew our vows at Unrivaled.
Absolutely.
Let's get into the atmosphere at Unrivaled, what it's like for the fans, what we felt, all that good stuff. Tell us about it.
So when you first walk up to the arena, there's a fan fest and you have to walk through the fan fest to get into where the games are played. And fan fest is just a few games outside. If you think of like a boardwalk, there's some shooting games, there's photo booths, there's photo ops everywhere, and everything is free. Once you walk in, you're not paying extra for anything in FanFest except food and merch.
And drinks.
But it's a cool experience. We got pictures and you get a little card printout and we got pictures on this big chair with Unrivaled. Like we've talked about Unrivaled in past episodes and talked about how well they brand and how well they market. So just expect that in person at this fan fest. It's not a big space. It's small, but it's just big enough.
Yeah.
And it's a cool thing for fans to come early, shoot around, win some prizes. Then you walk in and it's the merch store and they have team merch, Unrivaled merch, sweatshirts, t-shirts, hats. Like
you have some of
I'm
your
wearing a sweatshirt right now. And there's a little bar that you could get some drinks and then you walk through into where the main court is. What were your thoughts on the Fan Fest and that overall experience?
So we actually interviewed some fans before the games on Friday and everyone was so excited. I really like Unrivaled that it's a small venue because it feels incredibly intimate. There were people coming from all over. They were booking their trip just like us, booked their trip to Miami to come to Unrivaled. Not they were going to be in Miami and decided to come to an Unrivaled game. They decided to fly out to Miami, drive out to Miami to come see Unrivaled. And I thought that was really cool. The other piece, because it's so small, is that you see people everywhere. Cheryl Reeve walks in with her wife and son. Noelle Quinn, coach of the Seattle Storm, walks in. Courtney Williams' dad is just walking around.
Kia Stokes was there. She's
Yes.
not even part of Unrivaled, but she came to watch the games. And then during the games, you just see players from other clubs that aren't on the court sitting 2 rows down from you. So that part is really intimate and a cool experience. And then as a fan, you would also probably be stunned by just seeing all these WNBA players they could be sitting right next to you.
Yeah.
The other things I noticed from fans, no one's just strolling in to Unrivaled that lives in Miami. These are true fans of women's basketball. Almost every person who walked through into the games had some form of WNBA gear or some form of Unrivaled gear or an Everyone Watches Women's Sports shirt. The gear, everyone was decked out, which I absolutely loved. Men, women. Yeah. We talked to teachers who were on their break and specifically used their break to come see Unrivaled games. I just love that atmosphere because they're not just there to like, oh, this would be a fun side activity to do. These are people who are in it. During the games, they do trivia and give away prizes. I'm not kidding. No one got a trivia question wrong. And some of these questions were hard. It's like, who's the only player for Unrivaled who was born in Florida? Or who's the youngest player in Unrivaled right now? People were getting the answers to all these questions.
Right.
In front of everyone.
You need to give the answers to both those questions so people don't drive themselves crazy.
Only player in Unrivaled who was born in Florida was Tiffany Hayes. And the youngest player for Unrivaled right now is Aaliyah Edwards.
That's such a good point. They were doing the trivia and fans were just like, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah,
like,
they didn't even hesitate.
No. And I was like, I don't know who the youngest is. Who are the rookies? Rakia, Angel,
yeah,
Aaliyah.
we were going through.
And then the production of Unrivaled, we've talked about it on TV. It looks great on TV. It is even cooler in person. The way that they introduce the players, the way that each team has its own kind of backdrop, that it is in motion on the screens. The scoreboard is up on the screen. And then in the fourth quarter, because it's a score that they need to get to, they do like this meter where you fill up to get to the score. I was just super impressed by all of the visuals that were there.
And the visuals for each team. The Lunar Owls have feathers all up in the background and the laces have shoelaces. And when the players come out, they go one player from one team, one player from the other team. They switch up the visuals completely. They put the player's picture on. They walk out of this little area and go to their side. And that is just such a fun experience. Yep. And I've just never seen anything like it.
I was trying to think about it. It truly felt like I was in Miami at a very almost like bougie without being pretentious event. I felt like I was an insider there. Yeah. And I think every fan felt like that because it is so intimate, because it's like fun and almost feels light, but is super ultra competitive, which we'll get into. I just felt like I was like, I had access to something that other people don't. Does that make sense?
I get that. And it almost also feels like you're in virtual reality. I feel like they make it gamified and they have music going the whole time. And to your point, when you get to the fourth quarter and it shows the levels of how far away teams are from that winning score, it just feels like a video game almost. And it just adds to that whole experience, the whole fan experience. And people get so into it at the end. It just makes for such a great atmosphere.
Definitely. We also just need to say Unrivaled is essentially a startup. This is a new concept, new idea, new league, and they are doing an amazing job.
If you told me, or if I didn't know this was a startup and I just came into this knowing nothing and someone were to tell me that, I would not believe them.
Maybe we should say right here, we're not getting sponsored by Unrivaled to do this. Yeah. This is all coming from us. We paid our way out there. We did everything. We are not getting paid by Unrivaled to do this, although if they would want to, we would welcome it. But like, this is really, truly our experience.
And you all know, if you've been listening to us for a while, we are true fans of all the sports we cover. We got into this because of how big of fans we are, and we continue to be fans and try to bring other aspects to that. But we just really enjoyed our experience.
Yeah. So let's get into the games. Let's talk about the Friday night games. First on the docket were the Rose versus the Lunar Owls, and the Rose gave the Lunar Owls their first loss of the season. They beat them 72-63.
I was like, no, we're bad luck for the Owls. And as I say with everything, I don't have a favorite team in Unrivaled because I love the players on all teams. I was like, I don't want to be here to see the Owls lose their first game. That's so sad.
Angel Reese for the Rose had a 20-20, 22 points, 21 rebounds, the first ever in Unrivaled history, which was very cool. The Lunar Owls were playing well, but they handed it to the Lunar Owls.
Yeah, they did. The Rose just seemed like they were on another level that night, and they were just connecting. They looked unconscious. Chelsea Gray, for example, her passing and the way she was connecting with her teammates, the way she was shooting the ball in that game, she was on another level. Angel Reese with 2020. It was so fun to watch. And to your point, the Owls, it's not that they played bad, but they just couldn't keep up with how well Rose was playing.
Chelsea Gray had 26 points, 5 assists. She is the point god for a reason. And Brittany Sykes-Slim did great in this too. And we'll talk more about her because we love her.
Yes, she is awesome.
And then in the second game, the Vinyl beat the Mist 72-65. We need to talk about someone else we love. And this is because of this weekend, and that is Ryan Howard. She went off in the first half, scoring 22 points. If you watch the WNBA, you know Ryan Howard's good. You know Alicia Gray is good. They both play for Atlanta. Seeing them in person, I'm like, these are two of the best players in the league. Alicia Gray plays for the Lunar Owls. Ryan Howard plays for the Vinyl. I think the Atlanta Dream could be scary this year. They're getting BG, and they're going to have those two, and they have just been putting in the work at Unrivaled. And they're already so good.
I just don't think either of them get enough credit for how good they are.
For sure.
And I'm hoping we can provide some of that here because they deserve it, without a doubt.
Definitely. And the Vinyl closed this out with a great run by Ray Burrell. She scored the last 9 points of the game, got the game winner. She was in the press conference after the game with Coach Teresa Weatherspoon, and Teresa Weatherspoon was just so complimentary of Ray Burrell.
Talked about her work ethic, how good she already is and how good she's going to be. She kept saying, you'll see. That was cool to witness.
So let's talk about these post-game press conferences because we had access to them and we were nervous.
Another time of me shaking because once again, this is our first time doing this. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if we were expected to ask certain things. And we were just trying to be a sponge that first night and take it in and understand the etiquette for post-game press conference, especially when the coach and player from the losing team comes in versus the vibes of the winning team. So that also managing that piece was very eye-opening to us and just another learning experience.
So after the Lunar Owls got their first loss, Alicia Gray and DJ Sackman come in. DJ Sackman is the coach for the Lunar Owls. And Alicia Gray is like sullen. And I'm like, I am not asking this poor woman any questions. She just wants to get out of here. Yeah. And we didn't. Like Danielle said, the first press conference, we just were trying to be like, what is the etiquette here? What do people ask? What is allowed to be asked? How is this working? But I was like, wow, the energy in the room, you're in the same room, but the energy of the losing team, and then when the winning team comes in, the energy totally shifts.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see, to say the least. And then for the Vinyl, Angel Reese walks in, and we had heard over this that Angel is protective over her time, especially protective over her time with media, which I totally understand.
As she should be with the crap she has put up with over the past couple of years. So 1000% understand that.
Yep. And she walks in and we're like, oh man, she is here and ready to chat.
And she was fired up after that win. She threw the hootie hoo right back in the Owls' faces. This was her first time being chosen for the post-game press for Unrivaled. And she made that known coming in there. And she was excited. She just had a huge game. First 2020 game in Unrivaled history. She is another person who is so tall in person and just so strong. Obviously, Angel gets a lot of press, and being in the room with someone who gets that much press, it doesn't feel like a real experience.
Her presence is just huge.
Yeah.
In a room. She did get a little emotional with one of the questions and just pretty much explained she's still only 22 years old. And there's a lot of pressure, and everything she says gets ripped apart all the time. And we said, like, Why not just be your authentic self? Why not call people out, be your competitive self? Because you're going to get ripped up no matter what. And I was just really grateful that we had that time with her, even though we kept our mouths shut.
Yeah. I really do feel for Angel, and I hope that crap dies down and she can truly just continue to grow in the WNBA and continue to do well, because she is a hell of a player. She's going to do some great things, but it was just pretty shocking to be in the room with her and get to experience that. So I am also grateful for that experience.
Yes, we learned a ton. We were so nervous at that press game. We were not as nervous. We were nervous for the interviews, but we knew what we were going to say. And so we had planned. And as an FYI, we plan a ton for this podcast. And anytime we interview someone, we plan a ton. So to think of things off the cuff is not something that we're used to. And so we're doing a lot of learning.
To be fair, we're not sports analysts. Yes, we both played basketball, but it is a totally different level.
Yeah, you can't call what I did play.
But I'm just saying, we are not analysts of the game.
Yeah.
Like, that is not our role. That is not what we normally do. So that was part of the nerves. I don't want to just ask a question to ask a question. I don't want to ask something that's going to upset or piss someone off. We were just trying to learn how to manage that piece.
So we took it in the first day, and then we went into the Saturday games, and we felt a lot more confident.
Yeah, we both got a question off, and I wasn't shaking like a leaf. That was really impressive for myself.
So let's get into these Saturday games.
Lunar Owls, having come off their first loss of the season Friday, came out strong in this game against the Laces. If y'all have been following Unrivaled, you know that a few weeks back, the Lunar Owls gave the Laces their first loss of the season. They came into their first match together, both undefeated. So this was a highly anticipated game. Unfortunately for the Laces, they have had so many injuries. The Lunar Owls did end up winning this game 88-60. Ariel Atkins signed the day before and was playing big minutes on Saturday. So was not the same, because the Laces are literally just trying to figure out what they're doing with their team with all of these injuries, which is unfortunate for them.
So let's talk about this. They have the following people out. They were not playing in this game: Tiffany Hayes, Jackie Young, Alyssa Thomas, Kate Martin, and Benai Hamilton. So as you mentioned, Ariel Atkins came in. She was on maybe day 1.5, trying to get up to speed. And she did pretty well. She finished with 10 points for the Laces. Alicia Gray for the Lunar Owls goes off. And so does Skylar Diggins-Smith.
Yes.
Has 25 points.
And Alicia Gray had 26 points.
On top of that, Courtney Williams had a double-double with 11 points and 10 rebounds. I also just need to say, Natisha Heidemann is now playing for the Laces. She is very small. She was one of the most impressive people that we saw.
And what I always say to you, or what I've been saying a lot this weekend, is like, if you are that small and in the WNBA, you have to be so talented. It's not even funny. And seeing her in person and seeing just how small she is and seeing how good she is and how athletic and talented.
And create space.
Yeah. This was the game Cheryl Reeve was at. And the cool thing about this, you have Kayla McBride and Natisha Heidemann on the Laces, and you have Nafisa Collier and Courtney Williams on the Lunar Owls, who all play for the Lynx. And Cheryl Reeve, also, we didn't mention, just happened to be sitting right in front of us. But getting to see that dynamic too. I mean, that team made it to game 5 of the WNBA finals, and to see them playing against each other was a lot of fun. And you could tell they were having fun on the court. Like, at one point, Courtney Williams was laying on Natisha's back during a downtime of a play. And
there was one point where Nafisa Collier and Natisha Heidemann were one-on-one, and Fee was just kind of like laughing.
Yeah, so that was also very cool. Even though the score wasn't as close, it was still a fun game to watch.
Skylar Diggins-Smith post-game goes off and tells everyone that the Lunar Owls are carrying the league, which we need to get into the competitiveness, because we've been talking a lot about like everyone's so friendly with each other, and that is true. But my other huge takeaway from this was, holy crap, these women are so incredibly competitive with each other. They are friendly, but when they get on the court, it's like a switch goes off. Angel Reese is a totally different person. Skylar Diggins-Smith is a totally different person. Alicia Gray, Ryan Howard, you can see it turn on. People were upset with Skylar's comments, And after watching this weekend, I was like, nope, that's just what a competitor does.
Exactly. They're so competitive with each other. That is what they're going to say. And what we've said before, if any male athlete were to say something like that, people want to bat an eyelash. So I get frustrated when people get upset by those things because I'm like, this is part of the game. Yeah. This is how they should be acting. Yes. Do you think when Patrick Mahomes was going into the Super Bowl, someone would have batted an eyelash if he said we're carrying this league on their back? No. So you know what, Skylar Diggins-Smith, talk your shit.
Exactly. And we all know that Patrick Mahomes isn't carrying the team on their back. It's obviously Taylor Swift.
Fair.
And the competitiveness just continued into the second game. The Phantom beat the Vinyl 79-72. You mentioned before, BG, Brittany Griner, had a huge block on Ryan Howard. It was interesting because the Vinyl played the Mist the night before. Ryan Howard was playing and she got knocked down, and Aaliyah Edwards on the Mist went to pick her up, and Ryan Howard would not take a hand from Aaliyah Edwards. She waited for someone on her team, and Aaliyah Edwards brushed her off, which I was like, wow, these are super competitors. And then so BG lays the block down on Ryan Howard, and you could tell Ryan Howard did not want to take that hand back up. I am not going to take the hand of the person who just blocked the shit out of me and knocked me to the ground. But then I think she remembered that BG's going to be on her team this year. She slapped a smile on her face and got right back up.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I noticed in all these games is there are so many technicals, and that speaks to the competitiveness of the players because a foul will be called. The player does not like the foul that's called. Yeah. They do not care. They get in the ref's face and just start yelling at the ref, and the refs do not put up with anything. They hand out technicals like it's candy. I think it's a little overkill with the technicals because
I think the fouls are overkill.
There's so many called. The players just get so pissed off.
At one point during this Phantom Vinyl game, I didn't know who was getting the technical. It wasn't clear to me. There was just like kind of chaos everywhere. And I was like, hold on, who actually got that technical?
My favorite part about this game in particular, we had mentioned it was Natasha Cloud's birthday on Saturday. She got the game-winning shot of this game, scored 14 points. In a perfect world, that's what I wanted to happen. Yes. Like for Natasha Cloud to hit the game winner on her birthday. It was so fun getting to witness that.
Definitely. And Brittany Griner and Sabrina Ionescu added 22 points each. So a great win for the Phantom, and they needed it.
They did. I think they were 2-6 going into this game. That win was big for them.
Exactly. And there's one more weekend of Unrivaled games, and then they go into playoffs. So it's crunch time now. The top 4 teams make it into the playoffs, so they got to step it up.
For sure.
So then we get into the post-game press conference, and we do a lot better. You could check out highlights of these interviews on our socials. We're posting things there, so that was great.
I was really proud of myself for asking a question. Yes. Carolyn did not get it on video, which I asked you to do, so we won't be showing that. Not that I think it was the world's best question, but was proud of myself for not shaking so hard that I couldn't get one off. Natasha Cloud and Courtney Williams both scored the game winners for their respective games, and vibes were high coming into the post-game press conference.
Getting to interview both of them was definitely a highlight, which I want to get into, like the highlight of this trip. So tell me some of the highlights of the trip for you.
For me, everyone who listens to the pod knows I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. Getting to interview multiple former Notre Dame players, huge highlight for me. Kayla McBride, Skylar Diggins-Smith, Arike Gumbawale, all the players. Like, I am not just a Notre Dame fan, but knowing that is a school that I have followed for years and years, that was really cool. Notre Dame women's basketball team was at the games on Friday, so we got to see them. That was a really cool experience as well. But I think interviewing Skylar Diggins-Smith had to take the cake for me.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
How about for you?
It was our first time meeting all of the players. And so we introduced ourselves. We let them know, like, hey, we're married. We have a podcast together about women's sports. And so many of the players reacted so positively to us being married. It was so sweet. Brittany Sykes, Slim, who plays for the Washington Mystics, was like one of
the Rose.
Yes. Thank you. Was one of the coolest people that we got to talk to. She brought down my anxiety level so much because she was just like amazing.
Just psyched to be there. Yes. Brittany Sykes, get it? And she also gave you a little hug after the interview, which was the sweetest thing ever. And then we saw her in the hallway after and just continued the conversation, which is just a nice thing to be able to do and get to know her more. Was such a nice experience for both of us.
Yeah, for sure. On top of that, Brittany Sykes, Natasha Cloud, Courtney Williams, they are just the sweethearts of the league. Easy to talk to. And it's no surprise to me that they're also the ones who are out and proud. Of course, the gay girls in the league are the coolest, nicest. And they weren't just nice to us. We told them that we were married and they were pumped for us, but they were incredibly nice to every single person they interacted with. And that's not to say the other players weren't, but they just went out of their way to be so incredibly nice to people.
I agree.
I also just need to mention we both had a moment where we fell in love with Ryan Howard. I think it was when I was interviewing her. We just were like, you are so talented. You are so incredibly tall. You are so incredibly beautiful. And she really obviously tries to think about her responses and respond in a way that is thoughtful. We just both melted.
Yeah. And she's someone who does not get enough media press, in my opinion, for how good she is. And she comes off as a little more soft-spoken, and she definitely is when we were talking to her. And I think that's part of it. And I just want people to recognize how good of a player she is and person she is. And this goes for all these players. I'm just saying, for someone who might not get as much attention as other players, and maybe some people listening right now don't know who a Ryan Howard, a Brittany Sykes, a Courtney Williams is, you should definitely check them out and get to know them.
Also, just the highlight for me was we get to do this together. We had a friend say today, would your 16-year-old self be freaking out over the weekend you had? And the answer is 1000% yes. If you told me at 16 that I was going to be with the love of my life,
wow,
going to Miami to spend time with WNBA players and go and watch games to create something that we just have really been loving creating, it was so amazing. I love to do this work with you specifically.
Same.
We said that a bunch this weekend. If we were here by ourselves, would it be amazing? Yes. It's so much more special to do it with a person you love. So thank you.
Thank you.
On top of that, having a weekend in Miami together, we've talked about my mental health quite a bit. I was just like, this is what I need in my life. I need more of this. I need more of us being together, doing things that we're super passionate about. We said, we were like, we don't want to leave Unrivaled. We want to be here. We want to continue to do this type of work. So continue to follow us, share us as much as you can, because we want to continue doing this. We love it so much from a fan perspective, and we're getting to learn so much. So please continue to support us, because we want to continue doing this.
It was a wonderful weekend with you. I love you so much. I'm glad we started this dang thing, and to see where it's come and to be able to experience what we experienced this weekend. I'm still having trouble believing it actually happened. And the whole time I was in it, I was like, just be present, because this is the coolest thing ever, and couldn't have done it without you. So
likewise,
love you.
Thank you.
And with that, Women's Sports Weekly is Unrivaled.
Yeah. That is it for this week. We will see you next week on Women's Sports Weekly. In the meantime, watch women's sports, rate and subscribe to the pod on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Share the podcast with your friends. Keep sending us topics you want us to cover on Instagram at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.